Hey all, I see we have a few participants starting to fill in. Um, just a kind of prefacing note that we'll probably have a shorter meeting today than the full hour as usual.
Yeah, so shorter meeting today. A few folks aren't feeling well. We're missing a few folks, so we may keep it light. But welcome everybody to our December EJCGC meeting. We are happy to see you all. So a couple of announcements up at the top. So this meeting, we're going to be talking about the election, and we're going to be doing a little bit of prepping for next year. At the top, we are trying to figure out how to make these meetings more effective. And one of the things that we're thinking is to open up the format so it's no longer a webinar, and we invite like the audience in and just have like everybody on Zoom. Everybody gets to participate. And that way we can make sure that we're encompassing and hearing a wide variety of voices. So in the coming year, that's one of the changes you will see. And that's one of the changes you will see. But tonight we wanted to just kind of go over the election results and talk about some EJ issues that were on the ballot, and then also talk about the budget for next year. So we'll start with election. And more specifically, Measure A. I think at an earlier EJCGC meeting, we had a conversation, and I might have mentioned that Climate Plan was opposing Measure A. I wish I had some of the swag near me that I could like hold up.
I saw your video.
Oh, nice. So for folks who don't know, Measure A was a half-cent sales tax. Oh, thank you, Moise. Was a half-cent sales tax that was going to build a bunch of transportation projects in the region. It had 25% of the money going towards RT, and which we love, but a lot of that other money were going to go to projects that weren't going to be good for the environment, and also weren't necessarily going to help people in environmental justice communities. And so it was defeated, and there are a lot of conversations now about what we do, because we needed some of that money for RT. We need to fix our roads. And so there's a lot of conversations happening now about what happens now that Measure A is not working. I mean, it's not passed. Along with that, we have a new building ordinance, which folks on this call gave a lot of input in. And the new building ordinance has passed the city on Tuesday. So sorry. New building ordinance passed on Tuesday. So the work that we do here, the input that we've given in this committee has really, I mean, it doesn't always feel like it's impactful or it makes changes. I know I at least feel that, but it is definitely, that input is definitely being heard and listened to and considered by our city. So, and again, I'm sorry for folks. I'm just going to rush through the meeting because I think I may only have like 5 more minutes before we lose it over here. The budget. So the city starts its budget process in May, and we want to get ahead of that. And so in January, we want to have a conversation with everyone about what are some of the budget asks that we should start asking for. There's a lot of new city council members. There are a lot of people that we can meet with, that we can engage with, and we want to do it earlier than later. We want to do it now before everyone's fighting for pennies. We want to figure out, how do we uplift environmental justice? How do we uplift climate in our next year's city's budget? And so that's the conversation we're going to have in January. So we wanted to like prime everybody, start thinking of stuff. I think one of the things I like about this space is we don't have to be, we're not as rigid, right? We can throw out some wild suggestions about what the city should be doing with the money. And so I welcome everyone to lean into that. Janice, you have a question, I'll take it.
Oh, not really a question, just like some emphasis on that, because have been doing a lot of research, and like more so a lot of my college assignments require me to read about like climate action plans and stuff like that, and then like the climate crisis. So I feel like it's important that we are, doing things sooner than later and staying ready so that we don't have to get ready, because when we try to pitch in around April, everybody's already digging in pockets. So I feel like it's important for us to insist this matter, because once this earth is done, we don't have a second backup earth ready for us to live on. So I feel like it's important that the urgency of this matter is like something that we think about, and not even just saying like, oh my gosh, we have to change the planet, but just practical things. Like one example, maybe fast fashion. Another example, recyclables. Another example, recycling bins in every neighborhood, better stores and stuff like that. So I feel like making it real practical and real simple, because there's no plan B earth that we have. So and we have a lot of our treasures stored up here, houses, homes, stuff like that, families. So I'm just putting a little emphasis on that.
Wonderful. Exactly. I love like recycling bins in every neighborhood, making sure that that's prominent. Education around recycling. They did a lot around compost, or there was a big push to have compost, but I didn't see a lot of education around it. I think those are great ideas that we can bring up. Moise, why don't we, Brenda, you have your hand up. Let's just bring Brenda on to speak.
Go for it.
Hi, you guys can hear me all right?
Yep, we can hear you.
So I've been meaning to connect with you all. Where in the general plan process of the city of Sacramento is the EJ element adoption process right now?
Oh, that's a good question. So they just released, what part did they just release, Moise?
The adaptation section?
The adaptation section, and they're taking comments on that. Other than that, from my understanding, they're going to run other round of public comments after this adaptation section. And then the city is going to be voting to approve the climate action plan. The cap. I know.
I guess, so SB 1000 requires that general plan updates include environmental justice, right?
Yeah.
So, and I know that I think my sense is that this group is more around climate pieces, which is EJ is also EJ, or hardcore EJ. Climate justice is environmental justice. So, but I'm specifically asking about the general plan, and if an EJ element, and is this group working there? And just like they just opened it up for comments on adaptation, there is an EJ element that they're supposed to pass as part of their GPU. Has this group participated in that?
Very early on. So the city did most of their EJ element about 2-3 years ago, and did most of their input. I think they had already started their EJ element before this group was even formed. And they have not had any desire to go back and do any type of, don't take it as colored as I said it. There hasn't been a big effort to go back and reevaluate those or vet the EJ element with this group. It is something we asked for in the beginning, but it just hasn't happened. From my understanding, that part of the general plan they feel is already.
Not that it needs, well, this is what advocacy entails, right? So I understand what you're inferring. but I guess is the GPU has not passed, right? They haven't adopted the GPU. And therefore they haven't adopted the environmental justice elements. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So at some point when they get ready to vote on the GPU, we can say whatever it is that we're going to say, or that I'm going to say.
Yeah. And
Yeah, I
then
guess, do we know if it's going to be a separate element or if they're just fulfilling the requirements by kind of weaving policies throughout?
I think they're doing a separate element. That is a great question that we
Yeah,
can-
SB 1000 requires that any jurisdiction updating 2 or more elements must, if
Do
they
an-
don't already have it, must do EJ. And it has like 5 or 6 requirements as far as thematic areas that it has to explore. And food access is brand new of part of that. And so the city was doing its GPU and it was updating stuff, right? Including the the climate action plan. And so then I think they had to do EJ, like you said, it's baked, the cake is baked and it was already completed. But, you know, the whole element, the whole GPU has to go before the public for like whatever, 60 days or 90 days or whatever it is
Mhm.
for comment. And I guess my question for y'all is, has that happened yet? I don't see that the GPU has gone out for public comment.
No.
Okay.
No, and the cap is part of the GPU too. So they're waiting for the cap to be finished. They like piecemealed it. So they're waiting
Yeah.
for the cap to be finished and then the GPU will go out.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a great thing to remember to keep on radar, because I know the EJ element, I engaged on it 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago. I might have been pregnant with this one when they were doing that. So it was a while ago.
Yeah, and I think when it's piecemeal that way, it's challenging for communities to continue to stay engaged, you know. And then the other observation that I have is that this group has the words EJ in its title, and then by just a general comment is it'd be cool to have more synergies with the EJ element in this group. Because what happens when I'm talking to communities is there's also a Sacramento environmental, just another Saki with Adnan's group. And so then, yeah, I think us in the community also, we need to organize our own selves too, right? Because there are several groups with the words EJ in it. And some of them are, like yourselves, are very tied with city initiatives. And so where is it that folks can go to plug in? And if policy is their thing, or if they want, you know, to be more on implementation programs like tree planting programs or air monitoring or some of the great ideas that the young lady was sharing earlier.
So Brenda, also, I think we would love to hear your, when we go over the cap and like the general plan, we'd love to hear your expertise on food access.
Oh yeah, definitely.
What elements may be missing. And then I know I just talked to Erman yesterday, and me and Moise have had a lot of conversations about exactly what you're saying, like in full transparency, about how this group doesn't necessarily follow EJ principles. As much as we've tried to implement them, I think just the structure, the development, and the makeup of this group never fully lived that out. And so one of the things I said at the top of the meeting we are doing some changes. So we're going to open the meeting up to the audience. So like we're doing now, so that more folks can provide input, so that we can make sure we're representing a larger breadth of people, to kind of solve some of those fixes or fix some of those issues.
Yeah, I like this group to all the meetings I've come to, which have been very sparse. You know, I think I'm just generally confused on how participating in one group versus another group versus what we're doing, city, county, or other areas,
Yeah.
what does my contribution of time, effort, and dollars, to what end? So I think, offline or in another meeting, or as continuing part of our conversations together here, on Thursdays of every month, how we can be more intentional, because it's really confusing for the community to know how they can get involved and plug in.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, 100%. I would love to open it up to other folks. How do folks think about how we could improve this space in particular, or what role do folks see this space potentially having? And I'll just kind of tee it up with this. I think one of the things that we go back and forth about, and hold on, let me look at who's all on the call before I know how spicy I can get. Okay. Even though we're being recorded, still. One of the things that I think we've kind of gone back and forth about is, since the beginning, is how involved do we want the city? How ingrained we're not a commission or a committee of the city. So we don't have to follow like the Brown Act, or we don't have to follow the rules of boards and commissions, because we operate just outside of that. And that gives us a lot of autonomy, but we do operate in collaboration with the city, which gives us a lot of access to them. And so we've been able to have city officials or folks with expertise that we have easy access to. And so we've been trying to balance, like, the access is great, but then we don't have the same freedom to be as candid, but we do have freedom to be candid, but the more candid we are, we lose access. So we've been going back and forth, and I'd love to hear folks' thoughts about, where they think this group's sweet spot may be.
I'm
Folks
not
in the
sure.
audience.
I'm not sure if the group has explored actually going to city council meetings and giving our take on synopsises of so tonight is the parks meeting, it's at the same time as this, right? It's at 6 p.m. But I often go to the parks, call into the parks meeting and give them an update of any of the projects that we're involved with, the Sacramento Food Policy Council. Even though it's an off agenda item, I wait until 7:30 and I give them a rundown of, like, this is what we're doing, this is what we're up to. Sometimes the members and staff might have like an ad hoc question for me. But I think, it would be cool to show up to city council or to budget or law and ledge or one of the other meetings and say, hey, I've been participating in these meetings. These are some of the ideas. This is, a 2-page leave behind of, some of the themes that we explored with some, call out, whatever, of folks' direct statements. I don't know if that.
We've done a little bit of that. We've done like letters to council. We've had time on council agenda, I think 2 or 3 times. We've tried to do public comments, but I think always more of that is helpful.
And I think
Nice, that's great. That's awesome.
I think the other thing I'll just say on that is, you talked about advocacy, and of course there are spaces like the Sacramento Environmental Justice Coalition, which now exists specifically for advocacy. And one of the challenges with this space in engaging with advocacy is it is just this space. It is just this monthly meeting. There's not really coordination beyond that scope. And so I think that is one of the questions of, like, is this an advocacy space? And it hasn't been. We haven't been having that like inter meeting work or coordination really being done. It's more just been, I think, kind of informational guest presentation, so that it can inform advocacy in other spaces. But that is a question of the role of the space that we'll be reevaluating in this coming year to try to be more effective.
Yeah. Anyone else want to weigh in? Yeah, Steve and then Nick. Oh, Nick, I think Steve gave you.
Nick, go ahead. I'm still kind of contemplating here. Yeah, good evening, everybody. Nick Romo. Um, yeah, I'm contemplating too, but one of the things that I would love to get to kind of dive into the expertise that Maurice and Nanai and everyone else on the call who interact with the other groups is kind of doing an assessment of what what unique tools and skills that this group can provide to kind of empower and support everybody else. So my initial my guiding thought of being on this group was to have this monthly calls and for the cities and other community experts to utilize kind of a brain trust that they can come to and really kind of get some technical or other forms of expert advice, input, feedback, guidance. And so that's kind of how I've thought about this group. But I'm certainly happy to adapt and develop and do more. So.
Mhm, mhm. So kind of like what's the special sauce? I think let's see, we have a lot of good groups on the call. I think so. One, the history of environmental justice in Sacramento has been mostly fragmented for years. And so I think this is an iteration of many groups that have tried to start. I also think like the Sacramento Environmental Justice Coalition, the EJC, is a great space, and honestly probably one of the most authentic spaces right now doing grassroots EJ work. I think our special sauce, and kind of one of the things me and Moise were playing around with, is the ability to be informative, the ability to bring the other groups together. I'm looking at some of the people who are in the audience. Like we have Brenda, it looks like Lori's on, Kim, like you guys are all, Angela, like all leaders in other organizations and on other projects. And so is there a way to make this space where we come get the information and then we can disperse that out to the other groups that are doing something EJ, something climate, something environmentally related, but we're all getting the information here. Not all the groups have the same access to the city or willingness for the city to come to meetings in the same way they will for us. And so is there a way for us to use that to help everyone? That's kind of where we were thinking about going. So less advocacy, more informational.
And I don't want to overspeak, but one of the things also that, if I remember correctly, part of the origination of this was, as you and the team built this out, was also representation from across the city, different neighborhoods and different interests and different professional expertise.
Yeah.
So to the extent that we can continue to root ourselves in that as well, I think that's part of our special sauce.
I agree. We started out with 16 members, and it was beautiful. It still is. Y'all are still beautiful. I'm not downplaying y'all. But yeah, how do we sustain folks? And I think that's the other reason why we're talking about bringing the whole audience on too, is because then it's not just dependent on a core group, but we really can like build some more collective power. Steve, did you still pondering?
Pondering if I should say what I'm about to say. I mean, Brenda, much infinite respect to you, but you know, I think you might be under the impression that they are listening to what we have to say, or that they really care. I just don't think that they really give a damn about what we think. They just see us as a box to tick off, like, oh, we presented to the EJCGC and that satisfies the environmental justice outreach component. Like they said in the CAP draft, like we consulted in air quotes, huge air quotes, the EJCGC. So, you know, we're on solid footing here. You know, we've done our job. I think and I don't know how to get around that. So I was hesitant to even bring this up. But my suggestion, I don't know if this would help at all, but to kind of like formalize the work and maybe even establish us as an official board or committee. But at the same time, if you look at, for instance, the Public Health Advisory Board, they're pretty candid about roundly rejecting things like the jail expansion. But even then, county staff, county supervisors, and this is the county, not the city. I get that, but they're still pushing forward with that flawed idea. So I don't know if this was initially established to be like Steinberg's kind of like yes men climate coalition type of thing, but it seems like I honestly don't know how to solve some of these issues. I think we just need to continue to be really principled and forthright in kind of saying we have some hesitations, some reservations about some of the things that are being proposed, and I think the idea, like what we had in terms of submitting comments to the city council about the draft cap, I think that was really good, something really good that we did. And I think, if we can get away from being pigeonholed into an advocacy role and kind of serve as almost like independent, or I don't want to say nonpartisan kind of space, a group of EJ experts and practitioners, who's offering kind of unbiased, untempered to some extent recommendations, from a policy standpoint, kind of like offering, kind of like being the legislative analyst office, but for EJ, kind of thing, that in and itself gives our recommendations more weight and gravity, so that when we do approach the city council with our recommendations, the cap needs to be strengthened, it needs to be 2030, not 2045, that those things are given more consideration, and I don't know whether it takes like a leadership change, a staffing change, for them to actually listen to what we have to say. But we have some more council members coming aboard who I think are a little bit better on the climate, so maybe they really will be empowered to listen to us more. That's my hope. But I don't want to be too negative. I realize I have been, and this is a really great space. I love it so much that I want it to become even better, and so that's why I'm trying to be forthright about this.
Yeah, no, same. And I think that checkbox is a big issue, and one that we've been trying to fight. And yeah, I'll let Janice talk. Janice.
Okay, so like I really do agree with a lot of the things that Steven said, because I feel like if we think about it, like kind of back to like our officials who we have and selected officials, like you guys see how old our president is. Like there are people who have been stuck in their ways for a very long time. So if we're being realistic here, coming and proposing views that it's kind of like, oh well, I've been alive 50 years, I've been alive 60 years, people don't care. A lot of people really do not care. But like I said earlier, we don't have a backup Earth once we destroy this one. And of course, the Earth replenishes itself, but it's just like we continue to do things, and we have a lot of things that continue to pollute the Earth, starting with industrialization. So it's just like it takes a while to be able to push it. And that's why it's so important that we're consistent. We've been at this, like you said, Nyla, for almost 2 years, So it's like, you know, we're going to receive backlash. We're not going to be listened to by some people, but I feel like consistency is key, allowing us to better ourselves. For then the people who do and are stuck in their ways, they can hear and like, well, I mean, you know, we don't have a backup planet, and this climate crisis is cutting close, you know, and we don't want it to be like, well, dang, you know, we got like 5 years left to live on here, and then, you know, it's bye bye, you know. So I feel like it's very important that we're just kind of like trying to be as, you know, dignified as we can when it comes to approaching these things, trying to handle these things, joining these meetings, because it's just like, you know, some people you might have to email them 100 times in order for them to finally give you a response. You might have to call up every week in order for them to finally pay some attention. But I feel like things like that are important. So I feel like sometimes don't let the little things be like, well, I'm not doing enough. Showing up and listening is enough. Because some people are uneducated and they wouldn't even take the time of day to join a meeting like this. So I feel like it's the little things that kind of start to help and add to the big things, because as you meet people out in public, it's like, all right, well, you know, I was in this meeting, I learned this, I heard about that. And then you might speak to the right person one day. And sometimes it's not always what you know, but who you know and what you're saying to the people that you know. So I feel like it's very important that the little things are accounted for. And one thing about this group, we're very diverse, we're very honest, and we're very transparent. Because I was taught that it's a sin to lie, and I'm not a liar. So, yeah.
You know, the two words that I think you and Stephen used, principled and dignified. I think definitely leaning in there is really important. I really appreciate this feedback. This is not the meeting we planned, but it was the meeting we needed to have. And
I think it was the meeting we planned. We said elections and then talking about what the space needs to be.
happens next. And I mean, yeah, I believe in this space. I think there's a lot of potential. I think it does need a little restructuring, and maybe some shifts to make it more powerful. And I think it's something that's reassuring for me to hear that we're more aligned on this, because me and Moise were thinking like, how do we tell folks that we want to like potentially change the structure? Like, how do we? And everyone's like, we had been joking about like, how are we going to tell people we may blow up the EJCGC? And now it looks like we're going to blow it up together a little bit. So that's helpful. I'm going to make a suggestion. What about some type of quick survey that we do and we can send out to our listserv, about like getting input like this from folks, just like maybe quick questions. How could this be more impactful? Would it be helpful if this group did more advocacy or was more informational? Just a few questions to gauge that. And me and Moise can synthesize that information and get back to you guys with kind of what we think may make this group pack a bigger punch. I think we can move forward. I don't want to stop other folks from talking or sharing what they think, but I think a good next step may be to survey folks. We have 150 people on our listserv that when we send the meeting reminders to, that's who we're sending it to. And we can be pretty intentional. Maybe Lori, you can send it to your group. Kim, like if you guys can also send it to your groups that you guys work with, we greatly appreciate. I'm sorry, Dell, that I keep calling you Lori. So Dell and Lori, send it to your groups. And that way we can really figure out, I mean, this space should be for everyone and it should really help and really lean into like environmental justice. Any final or other comments folks want to throw out? I think the other thing that may also happen next year is we will be moving to hybrid, some in-person meetings potentially. I think we also started in a time where that was not possible, and now that it is, we definitely want to be able to do some of these meetings in person. So we're also playing with that as well. Moise, you were going to say something?
I was. I think Stephen had a question about the origin of this space. And I think we can answer that. It came out of the process of the Mayor's Commission on Climate Change. It was one of the recommendations, I believe, and I think one of the only first recommendations that was turned into policy and adopted by the city council, aside from electrification, as far as like funding the creation of the space. And we'll also notify, just in case folks are not familiar, that Sacramento County has something of a parallel space that they just recently created. I say recently, but within the past few months, their Climate Emergency Mobilization Task Force. In that case, though, it is, I think, part of like the actual like infrastructure of the county, whereas we are not part of the infrastructure of the city. And maybe we can look at some of the like pros and cons and like differences between those two structures as we reevaluate what our role here is, or like what our role can be.
Before you got here, Nicole did some research for us on that. We have a nice little chart that lays out different structures, like a neighborhood association structure versus a nonprofit structure versus a city commission structure. So we'll pull that out again too. And exactly what Moy said, we were one line in the Mayor's Climate Commission that said the commission should establish an environmental justice collaborative governance committee. No conversation about what it does, no conversation about how it operates. The city said we support it. They gave money so that folks could get stipends for the first year. And then that's all the guidance we got. All right. Well, now.
Yeah, I had a little bit of experience in helping to stand up that climate emergency task force. In some of my work with the Sacramento Climate Coalition, you know, Chris Brown's outfit, and one of the things that I was really pushing for was that the people comprising the environmental justice aspect actually themselves lived in a CalEnviroScreen 4.0 70th percentile or higher community. So people who really have to on the ground, they have experience, for better or worse, dealing with the negative effects and cumulative pollution burdens that are experienced by overburdened communities. And they were pretty opaque as far as who was selected, or if they used that criteria in selecting the people who ultimately were chosen. And the other thing is that when they were standing this up, they were pretty intentional themselves about saying, well, they will try to accommodate, these what the consensus of the task force, but at the end of the day, it's this one man, white man, John Lundgren, who will ultimately, the sustainability manager, who will make the final decision as far as what ends up being put forward, and that doesn't really meet the mark for me in terms of collaboration. According to documents, like the spectrum of community engagement to ownership, which is pretty influential in my kind of development on this, is that the goal is to ultimately defer to the wishes of the community after they've been sufficiently informed and educated about the subject. So I think having them if I don't know if there's a way to include some kind of like you know, if we were to set up a parallel organization to the Climate Emergency Task Force and say it answers to Jennifer Vendema or something like that, you know, and she ends up going in sideways, you know, in a different direction than the consensus of this group, or you know, another iteration of this group, you know, can we kind of like, can we call shenanigans? Can we veto and override that, and you know, force them to kind of adopt our consensus based, you know, decisions? So yeah, that would be one thing that if we were to go around again, that I would really lobby for to change on the county's task force. And then I think there was this real effort on the part of the county to, you know, they had 6 members of the EJ community, and then 6 quote unquote topic or subject matter experts. And who's to say that EJ people are not themselves subject matter experts? And there was this real division between kind of like almost like these technocrats or you know, members of industry on the one hand, and then an attempt to counterbalance that with people, members of the EJ community. So, you know, I don't necessarily see those in opposition. I think they can kind of like be one and the same. So I would say, yeah, like kind of and then one youth member to kind of like break the tie. So you know, I think, yeah, if we were to go about that, a further recognition that EJ community members can be, you know, just as well versed on subjects like transportation, the built environment, air pollution, you know, water, that kind of thing, as, you know, a quote unquote subject matter expert. You know, who's, I guess, doing that in their day-to-day 9-to-5 job. So yeah, those would be a couple of things that if we were to construct, yeah, like a parallel to that for the city, that I would be looking to see, and maybe even more than one member of the youth, so that they're not, I guess, like tokenized as like, well, yeah, what do all young people think about this? Yeah. And you speak for all young people, you know. Yeah, I mean, like the youth are going to inherit, you know, what the, you know, the earth, you know, to be grandiose about it. So, you know, recognizing, yeah, that there can be multiple perspectives as well when it comes to that. Anyway, I'll stop talking and let Nick say his piece as well.
No, it's okay if I go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just making sure I'm naming that two men speaking back to back. Just naming that. Hopefully, not overreaching the space. But I'm just going back. One, I totally support you and I and Maurice in surveying us and blowing it up and recreating it as you think that is needed. And I think I go back to the original intention that I just want to give kudos to Nai because she built this with a lot of intention. If I remember correctly, each of the 16 were chosen for specific reasons, specific expertise, broadly defined, from our youth to our engineers to our folks that do political advocacy and policy advocacy. I think that I see this space as a way for us to bring together. I totally agree that we have EJ advocates that are experts in their own right, but also this space I think is taking it to another level where we have some kind of technocrats and folks that are inside the Capitol or outside the Capitol who have those experiences that can really inform and empower the real true organizers. I'll admit I'm not a good organizer. I'm not an organizer. And I truly appreciate and value the organizers. And I have a different skill set. And so now to the extent that you want to use us and how you want to use us, I think we're all here to serve.
I appreciate that, Nick. Yeah, I think our original group was dynamically suited for this work, and then we kind of the agendas kind of got away from us, I think, and capacity got away from me. But yeah, this has been really invigorating, slightly overwhelming because now I'm like, oh, we got a lot to do and figure out. One thing we know for sure is we are going to be moving this time slot. So maybe we may include that in the survey too, Moise. But we had a time we were thinking. You want to throw that out?
Yeah, we were potentially thinking, and so there is both like the consideration of like when in the week and then also when in the month, especially as we transition to January and kind of the break in between now and then. We're thinking probably towards the end of the month, on a regular basis, potentially on a Thursday evening, keeping in mind that it probably makes sense to have a weeknight evening, to make this space accessible to people who at work throughout the day. But yeah, I think those are some of the options we're considering.
All right. Me and Moise have a lot of work ahead of us, and we look forward to sharing that work with you all. Do I do quotes to end this? I don't think so.
If you have one.
I do always, but yeah. Okay. Amelia, were you going to say something?
I just want to say thank you for all you guys have done, you all have done, and yeah, looking forward to what the next iteration of this looks like and how I can help serve move it forward.
Thank you. So in other spaces, I end our meetings with quotes. And so I'll just do my favorite one, which is like my quote of the year, probably, which is from James Baldwin. He was writing a letter to his nephew about just what it's like to be a Black man growing up in America in the 1970s. And in that letter, he has a line that says, he like lays it out and says, and now you must survive because we love you. And I just love that line. Like, we have to survive because we are loved, because people before us walked so that we could run. And so we just have to survive, and we will, because we're loved and we love each other. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for this. This was fruitful and rich. Have a good
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Take
Good night.
care.